And now, in Learn Like a Leader, Prompt Like a Pro, Katherine Munro will reveal how leadership skills and AI prompting intersect. She will show how executives can turn LLMs into strategic tools, from synthesizing insight to strengthening self-reflection and team development. Please welcome data scientist from Swisscom, Katherine Munro.
All right. Whoopa, too loud. Hi, everybody. So can I just first get a hands up? Who here is a leader in the room? Okay, we got just a few hands up. I would argue that everybody who didn't put their hands up is underestimating themselves. We are all leaders of somebody, even if it's the newest person in the team that we're working in. And so I hope that my talk can be, useful for all of you. So just very briefly, who am I? My name's Katherine Munro. I'm a data scientist, but my background is in natural language processing, and so I've come to Swisscom. I'm currently working on the voice bot for our customers, and I'm a massive nerd about all these kind of things, so please do connect with me or catch me online on my blog or my book available at Amazon. Of course, otherwise you can just find me in the beautiful Swiss mountains. But when I'm not hiking, I'm working very much in the world of Gen AI, and I've been giving prompting workshops and use case ideation workshops for the last couple of years. And so today I want to talk about actually two main topics, the first two, which is firstly how to use your existing leadership skills to get more out of tools like ChatGPT, and then how to use those tools to actually become a better leader. I won't really have time to cover the team aspect, but you can feel free to ask me that in the question time. So firstly, let's talk about how to use your leadership skills to get better outputs from Gen AI. So first of all, a little thought exercise. So if you were a leader, whether that's a team leader or, as I said, just someone who's guiding a new employee in the team or something, how might you guide an inexperienced person through a task? Can I get some ideas? And let's not worry about the microphone, just shout it out for me. How would you guide an inexperienced person through a task? Pardon? Start simple. Very nice, yes. Show the input and output and what could be a process to get there. Perfect. You could suggest that they go to ChatGPT, that's right. Anything else? Yes? Perfect. Background information. Anything else? Give the book. Give them my book. Yeah? Explain the fundamentals. Perfect, amazing. We're going to see a few of these today, that's great. So basically this first section, you're going to see always on the left some leadership skills and then some example prompts. They're mostly hypothetical, but I've got a couple of real world examples in there as well from my work. So one thing you can do as a leader is understand the skills of your different team members and their specific strengths and what tasks would suit those. That helps with delegation. It's exactly the same with models because it's not just ChatGPT. There's many models out there. And so you want to similarly have an idea of which models produce different styles and what they're particularly good at. And similarly, you might know that you've got a new employee who has a bit of a weak spot, and it's not to say you don't want to let them develop in that area, so you don't give them that task, but maybe you pair them with a buddy or something. So you have to be aware of the weak spots as well. And again, it's exactly the same with LLMs. So, for example, on the LLM strength side of things, LLMs are great at tasks that require any kind of broad general knowledge about language. That means tasks like creativity, information synthesis, and so on. And on the other hand, they do struggle on things like maths, complex logic, obviously having the latest up-to-date information, private information, because if it wasn't something that they could be publicly trained on, they might be missing that, interpretability, and so on. So being aware of that. Oh, I'm so cold. I hope you can't hear it in my voice that I'm starting to shake. I need to warm up. So now another leadership skill is providing clarity and purpose. So I like to say the why and what's next of the task, right? And give really clear definition of the desired outcome so that whether this is an employee or a chatbot, it has a better chance of actually delivering what you want and something that actually fits in the bigger workflow that you're aiming for. What can also be useful with, say, a junior employee is to draw attention to the skills that made you select them for that task. That's going to boost their confidence and give them more of an idea of what you want them to do. And it's the same with bots. This is why there's so many prompts that start with, you are an expert marketer, or you are an expert at research, or whatever. And lastly, with a junior employee or someone new to a topic, you might want to invite them to ask you questions so that you can make sure they understand before they get started. And yes, you can definitely do that with a bot as well. At the end of your prompt, you can say, please, if you have questions, ask me now, and then let's go. So here's a hypothetical example. I made this up. In this case, I was asking for a new benefits guide for 6G technology. And so I've tried to say, okay, we need to articulate the advantages. We're trying to get companies to invest in it. So I'm trying to explain the why and the what's next. I'm defining the desired outcome. I'm, again, drawing attention to the specific skills I want the LLM to lean into. And I'm asking, I don't know if you can see it because of the table, feel free to ask any clarifying questions before you get started. All right, next one. Another great thing you can do as a leader, someone mentioned this sort of, is to break down complex requests into smaller steps, taking into account the ability of the employee. And of course, you can do that with a bot as well, and it can help both humans and bots to give them a framework to work with. So again, a hypothetical example. This time I'm asking for a communication plan, and I'm telling the LLM, please perform the following tasks, and so I'm basically breaking that down for them. Next, guide by example, illustrate the process. Very obvious one. Let's have a look how that could look. So, again, made up, let's say that I'm asking for a new employee motivation program for HR, and I want the bot to help me generate one. So I'm starting with an example of such a program, and basically by giving this example and then saying, look, now based on this, please fill out the following details, I'm also illustrating the process. And here comes a real-world example, and this is about, as we definitely touched on, the importance of domain knowledge and context and giving that where it's required. So with this one, I was actually using this to debug our voice bot, right? So I'm working on the voice bot, and the problem in the beginning was we noticed that sometimes it was explaining itself a little bit, which obviously it shouldn't do because that's a security risk. That can give a hacker an attack vector, because if you speak in the language of an LLM, you're more likely to break through its defenses. So in this case, I was basically giving some outputs of the bot to Swisscom GPT, which is our internal wrapper on GPT that's compliant. We can put customer data, we can put anything in there. And I was saying, highlight the outputs for me where the bot has explained itself. And what I've done is I've given an example of what that looks like. Unfortunately, that's in German, but it's just an example where the bot said, okay, I'm going to set this value to this. And then here's the crucial context, though. And the reason this was important for me as the prompter to include was I knew that if I didn't, then it was going to give me some irrelevant results. So basically I'm saying, look, by the way, it's perfectly okay for the bot to say something like, all right, I'll try to extend your payment deadline now. That's fine. I'm just worried about if it reveals its inner workings. So that crucial context helps me get a better result from the bot. And you can think about this like a bit of a gotcha. In programming you have gotchas, so pitfalls, common pitfalls. And so as with a bot, as with a human, a junior employee, it can help to set boundaries, like warning about such pitfalls and also warning what's in and out of scope, because we all know that chatbots can sometimes lean into one specific detail too much and get distracted by that, or not quite get what you want. And it can help and save you time to try to anticipate that and prevent it. And again, I have a real-world example. So in our voice bot, one of the tasks that it does is classify what the customer is calling about. And so, of course, we have descriptions for the different kinds of departments so that the bot can correctly identify where this customer needs to go. and I was debugging because we had a bunch of custom utterances that had been hand-labeled. They should have gone to internet support, but they didn't. So now I'm asking Swisscom GPT, hey, here are some custom utterances that should have gone to internet support but didn't. Here's the explanation I'm using to do that classification, and here are some example utterances that were misclassified. Can you help me detect why that might have been? And here I'm giving these boundaries, so I'm saying, look, ignore the fact that these inputs have been anonymized. When they're anonymized, you have $person, $. And I knew that if I didn't give that scope, the bot would say, oh, maybe there's a problem because it says $person. I don't want, that's a waste of my time. So I'm giving that scope. And I'm also saying, don't suggest anything about fine-tuning the model, cleaning the data, switching the languages. You know, my bot is multimodal. It has to handle bad data. So I'm giving it that scope. Next, we have the important skill of being able to build yourself into the process as a reviewer or quality control. You're the expert, so you know you might want to regularly touch bases with your employee as they work through a task, and you can do this in a bit of the same way with a bot. So the way you would do that, it's a little different to working with a human, but what you do is ask the LLMs for things you can fact check later. So say you are using GPT to teach you about some topic, maybe you don't actually know much about it, so you can't be the expert, but you can ask it to give you specific examples and things that are Googleable, so that you can, you know, apply your own judgment. So here's, I'll give you an example in a second, but a really great tip that I have learnt, if I get an output from GPT or Gemini and I don't fully trust it, sometimes I might say like, you know, are you sure? Sounds a bit strange. And I find that then it goes, oh, I'm so sorry, you're right, I'm sorry. And it completely backtracks. And that's not right? It's just trying to please me. So I have found it very helpful to say to GPT, don't doubt yourself just because I'm questioning you. Give me the answer you believe is right and teach me why you think that. And I think that's a very useful thing to be able to say to a junior employee as well. And so here's an example prompt. So again, it's a made-up one. I'm saying, look, I'm a Chief Innovation Officer. I want to introduce a change. Help me provide a guide on overcoming resistance to change and draw upon known models here and real-world examples. And this way, even if I don't know like the output, I don't know all the details that come out, I have something I can go and Google. All right, and now let's step backwards a little bit. Let's get a little bit meta, right? The opportunities to practice your leadership skills don't stop at all those prompts. So that whole part was about, you know, how can I have in the back of my head certain leadership skills that could be also useful as prompting best practices. Now the thing is that, okay, I thought the microphone was gone there. So by keeping that in mind, you know, you're practicing all the time. You're practicing both your prompting, you're also trying to get something out of the prompt, and you're trying to improve. But that continues when you look at the output as well, right? So by reflecting on your outputs, it helps you understand how easily you can be misunderstood, right? It's really good to think in advance, how might this bot go wrong? Because humans are exactly the same. So you need to practice that. So you have to learn to think about how other people think and to anticipate misunderstandings. And by doing this, you learn to be clear, to be explicit, to define the context and the problem. Crucially, it's great practice at accepting mistakes from others, because I know how annoying it is when GPT gives you garbage, right? And it's very good practice to go, okay, well, maybe that was partially my fault and it wasn't just the bot. And it's the same when you're working with humans. So as a couple of examples of how you can keep on practicing when actually working with the outputs of the model, not just the prompts. So of course, use your critical thinking, fact-checking, form your own opinion, question the output. Does that actually sound right? Always be on the lookout for ways to do better. That's good advice anyway in life. But when you spot them, be patient and constructive when you apply those opportunities. When the output is bad, notice what role you might have actually played in that. Maybe your examples weren't good or things like this. You didn't give the context. When the output is good, notice what helped and why. And another great tip for leaders, learn to delegate, right? I know a lot of us got here because we're perfectionists and things like this. It can be hard to let go of a task. And so use your prompting as a chance to practice accepting that maybe this output is good enough and I don't have to completely control it and make it perfect and do it all myself. Maybe this is going to be just fine. I see some people nodding. They obviously need this as well. So let's quickly recap. A little bit of movement to warm us all up again. So hands up, how can you use Gen AI to improve your leadership skills? Do you think you can apply those skills as prompting techniques? Yes? Come on, we need some movement. Very good. What about use prompting as a way to practice preventing communication breakdowns? Yes, yes. Reflect on how your instructional style affects task outputs. Yes, yes, yes. And of course, the answer is D, all of the above. So that's part one, right? That's about using your leadership skills to get better outputs from these tools. Now we flip it around and we say, okay, how can you use these tools as a leader to just be more effective and to grow personally? Because I think a lot of leaders, as I said at the beginning, they struggle to find use cases. People in general struggle to find use cases for these tools. And for leaders, that can be especially hard. But I've got a few ideas, right? So the thing is, as leaders, there are so many ways LLMs can help us solve tasks more efficiently and also just to pursue our own personal development goals. So let's have a look at some common leadership tasks which play to the strengths of LLMs. So LLMs are very good at information synthesis, idea generation, communication, obviously. That's kind of their whole thing. Teaching, that's a great one. And coaching and providing a second opinion. So for each of these strengths, I've done some brainstorming for you guys about how you might, some possible use cases for you. So for information synthesis, as a leader, you need to, for example, get a high-level overview of diverse, complex topics very quickly. LLMs, great for that. You need to stay up to date with tech trends and developments, but there's a million emails, you don't have time for it. LLMs, great for that. Quickly understanding and triaging various fires that are going on in your organisation. Gathering and summarising results, preparing feedback, looking at insights, all great examples of information synthesis. And so here's just one that's highlighting the overview topic. So again, it's just an idea or a prompt. I'm saying, look, I'm in charge of a 6G project right now. There's been an issue. It could delay the whole project. I'm not the tech expert, but please give me an idea of what could have caused this problem so that I can quickly understand this. Great way to use this as a leader. Next one, idea generation. Again, as leaders, we have to pitch a lot of ideas. We have to validate them quickly. Sometimes we have to solve novel problems with some brainstorming, talking to different stakeholders, thinking about different possibilities. You might have to find direction and goals for yourself and your team. Okay, and maybe create development plans. And so here's an example again for the first one. This is a real world example. Basically, I was playing with Swisscom GPT because I had an idea for a totally different way that we could possibly develop our voice bot. And so I was just role playing with the bot to see how that would feel for me as a customer. Now, again, LLMs great at communication. And as a leader, that's good because you might need to introduce new ideas, convince people, sell a vision and strategy, communicate clearly and efficiently. You have to balance competing stakeholder needs and concerns, maybe even moderate some disagreements or conflicts, and even deliver tough news. And a chatbot can be a very good coach and guide to help you through that. So, for example, Here I'm saying that I'm a CIO and I want to propose a shift to a cloud infrastructure, and so I have basically a communication plan, a draft. Here, can you give me some feedback? Just one possible use case. Now, this is my favorite slide, my favorite example, so everybody get ready, right? As a leader, you need to satisfy your curiosity, learn, practice new skills. And LLMs can be great teachers. Of course, we have to be careful of the hallucinations, but that's why we use our critical thinking and things like that. But I use this personally, this is my favorite prompt. I use this to practice French. I have full conversations with Gemini, and this is only half of the prompt, and it took many false starts and many failed conversations, and every time it failed, I copied the prompt I had so far, started again until I ended up with a killer prompt. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you want the whole thing, and now I have really good conversations in French, which is the closest thing I can get to practicing real time with a speaker. And if I would actually use the audio function of the bot, it's basically real-time practice. So that's invaluable. And next, LLMs can be great at giving you a second opinion or being a coach. And that's great because as a leader, we need to think critically, have different perspectives. We need to reflect on our own way of working. We often need a mentor, but because we're so high up in our careers, it can be harder and harder to find one. And we want to maybe set goals and document our journey. And I have one example for the latter case. This is just basically a simple prompt asking to help me with some journaling. So let's sum up. I recently we were doing a customer roundtable, actually asking customers how they use Gen AI. And one of the customers said, yeah, I use GPT for complex tasks that I won't ever repeat. So basically, they're using it to avoid learning and thinking for themselves. That's a huge missed opportunity. Another person then joked, yeah, I use it to write meeting summaries that nobody will ever read. Yeah, great. So basically what you're saying is you use Gen AI when you see no value in doing the task yourself. Again, as I've tried to show today, that's a huge oversight. What you want to be doing is using your leadership skills as prompting techniques. Reflect on the outputs that you then get and see what worked and what could have gone better. Spot ways to turn your leadership challenges into tasks that actually suit the strengths of an LLM, so use those use cases. And teach your teams to do the same. And as I said, we can talk about that in the question time if you like. Thank you very much. So, any questions? Yes, have you got another mic? Perfect. And I'm going to go back so you have my name.
Katherine.
Yes.
I've been working with people all my life. And I would like to add that telling them people when they struggling in the beginning that they're great and they'll get there, and encouragement is also very important to keep them motivated. And I've had some experience with ChatGPT. One of the things I like best is I can keep on asking questions without it ever getting tired of me.
That's true.
So you can torture it until it confesses. But
Okay, don't do that to your junior employees. Don't torture them until they confess.
exactly.
Just as a side note.
So it's a big advantage. But the real question I have is if you compare a chatbot with a human.
What do you hear?
Did I lose it? Oh, it's
Yeah.
still there. I need to be closer.
No, they're
So-
a bit buggy.
Anyway, so if you look at the differences between how you treat a human and a chatbot, can you elaborate a little bit on the differences in that respect between a human and a chatbot? Because they are like similar in your story, but I do feel like the advantage is you can just go on questioning it forever without being tired.
Mm-hmm.
You can torture it until, you know, it gets to the point where you want it to get. But you told me you can treat it like a human. So, and maybe in a way I already did that without realizing it. But can you give me some pointers about what the differences are really between the human and the AI?
That's a very good point, because actually AI ethicists have long been sounding the alarm on, if we start to just have assistants and things all the time, that could actually be problematic, because we start to habitually, act in a certain way towards AI, and that could carry into our lives with humans. And that's why it's also so problematic that so many digital assistants are female. We get way too used to bossing females around, and that's not good. So it's a good point. You should recognize the differences. And so what are some actual differences? Well, I suppose one thing, if I'm working with a junior employee, I actually have an interest in making sure they learn and grow, which of course I don't need with GPT. So that's going to change my attitude, because I suppose I'll just try to take more time to touch base with that junior and make sure they're understanding and things like that. Another way you need to be careful with the difference is that, as I said, it can be so frustrating when the bot gives you a garbage output, and sometimes it's so ludicrously bad that I confess that I want to type, "Are you stupid?" I get so mad with GPT. Don't do that, even if it is only a bot, because we don't want to build those habits. I suppose recognize that humans are humans, they're not machines, so you can't start to expect the same level of performance and things from them as you do from a bot. It's honestly, I hadn't thought about this. You've given me the mirror image of what I've talked about. It's a great point. Can you also yourself think of some more examples that are different? Or anybody else? It's all right. Let's leave that as a thought for a take-home thought, because I think that's very important. Any other questions? Oh, you have comment over here.
Thank you, brilliant Catherine. I share your zest for coaching curiosity, so to speak, or to respond to unquenchable curiosity. One cool thing we could also do is to refine a speech. So we can actually rehearse a speech with...
Sure.
My question is, I'm curious if you have a favorite Gemini or a favorite model, AI model.
Mm-hmm.
While people use Gemini, I use Pisces.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, so I get it. So of course for my day-to-day work I mainly use Swisscom GPT, because for things like coding problems, customer data, it's all completely compliant, so I can just throw it in there. But in my personal life I actually use Gemini. On the one hand, I just have, I trust it more than OpenAI. But also from a very practical reason, Gemini is connected with things like Google Maps, I think YouTube, hotels, flights, so that's quite cool. But honestly, I've almost never used it, but it is pretty amazing that you can say, like, I need to get to a job interview in Zurich by this time, what time do I need to leave my house? And it can figure that out for you because it's got connections to Google Maps with the train times and everything. But I like Gemini because it always provides a couple of sources at the bottom of the output, and you can click then its verify or something, whatever the button is, and then it will look in Google for supporting or non-supporting evidence, and then highlight color code, like orange means, or green means I found something that matches what the bot said, orange means I couldn't find anything. That's quite cool. You can also, and there's also little convenience things, like you can edit your original prompt, so that instead of, say, starting the conversation again, if you realize your prompt was bad, you can actually just edit it if it was the first one, regenerate, things like this. I think Claude is very good. That has a nice personality and from Anthropic. And I think that from an ethical perspective, Anthropic is a very good company. So that's one that I want to work with more. And the others I still actually need to experiment with. And it goes back to what I said about, same with employees, know the different strengths and what they're useful for.
So,
yeah. All right, that's enough. So please contact me if you have more questions.
Well,
okay. Let's sneak in one more real quick.
Yes. So in one of the prompts, you had a mixture of languages, especially the one that you were trying to explain what shouldn't a bot say to reveal certain information. Did this yield the same level of accuracy in responses? Did you ever suffer issues mixing languages within the same prompt?
I've never had any issues. So, I mean, I'm mainly working between English and German, but also a little bit of French and stuff. You know, our bot is multimodal. Our customers have 4 languages at Swisscom, and we find you can throw pretty much any data in there, and it works, you know, just fine. So, yeah. All right, that's time. Thank you very much.